Good morning. This is Michael Hayes from the Hiring Confessional. And today I want to talk with a guest here that's new to me. I just met her. But before we do that, I wanted to point out some of the things that we're trying to do with this podcast is discuss things about hiring and especially the faults on both sides. Not only does the worker do stuff, the employer does too. So it's kind of a place where people can ask questions or learn something about interviews and maybe get some insights into how people in the hiring business think. And of course, we can make fun of some of the dumb things they do. So my guest today is Seann Richardson from Ascentria Search Partners. She does search at a little bit higher level than I do, but I'm going to let her describe her business to you and kind of what she does. Seann?
Sure.
Nice to have you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Yeah, Ascentria Search Partners is a newly formed organization that came about by the merger of two companies, two legacy companies, mine being Calabri, which was formed under a different name in 1984. So I've been searching for a long time on that side, and the mainly contingent firm. And then a company that was formed in 2007 as a retained search firm. So we do executive level, professional level, I would say mid-management and up in accounting, finance, HR, operations, high-level sales and marketing, as well as C-suite. Executives, and we do across the country, and we've also done some international work as well.
Is Arizona a focus, or is it almost anywhere?
Almost anywhere, but we were mainly launched in Southern California and then expanded naturally through mergers and acquisitions and private equity relationships nationwide. But Phoenix is, where I reside full time. And so it's a new market for us that we are hoping to gain more relationships because it is such an emerging market.
Now, do you focus on anything in particular yourself, or is it more of a broad-based search?
I have an accounting and finance background myself. I graduated with a degree in accounting and worked in corporate accounting for several years. So that was where I started my specialty. And then we have a team of recruiters as well. So that does all avenues. Recruiting is it's all unique. Every search is unique. So we've even had clients where we built a solid relationship and they said, "Hey, Seann, can you help me find a director of stormwater engineering?" And I was like, "I don't know a thing about stormwater engineering, but I'll figure it out and I'll learn it." And because the recruiting looks really similar, to
Here's a question that lots of people ask, and I've got some opinions on, but I was listening to a guy today on the radio on the way in, and he mentioned something about AI and how it affects business. And he used this story. He said, AI is like a Frankenstein. It wakes up and it's super friendly and it picks flowers and it's nice to the kids. And then it tears the rest of the family's head off.
Oh.
That's why so he was acting like it's something that's going to end badly or it's not going to evolve enough. What do you think about that?
Obviously being new, there's always that knee-jerk reaction in the market and there's that fear. And some of that's legitimate depending on what professional you are in. Where I'm seeing it impact hiring is on the both on the candidate side as well as on the client side, people trying to overuse it. And, I can tell if somebody let AI write their resume for them. They all look the same, it's too generic, and it won't do the candidate justice really at all. And then on the client side, having it help you write a job description. Well, job description, I'm not a fan of job descriptions overall as the main recruiting tool because at the end of the day, yes, you're trying to fill a role, but you're also trying to solve a problem. And people are not pieces of paper. They're more than that. And so I like to use the 10-80-10 rule. It's a time saver. So if I want, let's say ChatGPT to help me summarize a candidate after I interview them, I'm going to put my notes into ChatGPT. I'm going to spend 10% of my time doing that. I'm going to let then ChatGPT do 80% of the work, but then I have to spend another 10% of my time reviewing the information that it comes out with to make sure that it's accurate, because it's not always accurate. I was recently talking to a CFO of a company here in the Valley, and they were looking for a controller. And they interviewed a dozen people, and they had an issue with candidates coming in and not even knowing what their resume said, let alone being able to sell it, because they let AI write their resume. And then the CFO was frustrated because it was a big time waster on his part that candidates were getting through to the screening process that shouldn't have been, because their resumes were over embellished, and it really didn't do a good testament to what their skill set really was. So,
Well, I totally agree about job descriptions. My opinion is I get one and I'm like, your place sounds like the most boring place on the planet. And it also sounds like a doctor's prescription. Like, oh, hey, you have to push yourself away from the desk at least 10 times a day. In order to do this job, you must be able to walk up and down a few stairs. And I'm just like, why do people feel that that's necessary to put it? And I know they'll go, oh, we don't want to get sued, but I don't know how walking in the building has anything about getting sued.
right. You know what? We've gotten so litigious that I can see why certain, job descriptions have to have certain amounts of information. When I'm recruiting a candidate, I screen them and decide they're a good fit before I send them the job description. And I'll even tell them, I'm going to send you the job description just so you have a basic idea, but let me highlight the pieces of this position that are really important and why your skill set is going to be a good fit, because it might not even be included in the job description, or it might not be highlighted appropriately.
And then the other thing you mentioned that I also liked was you were talking about how you use AI. But I think the difference most people don't realize is you've been doing it the hard way, so you know what to ask.
Oh, yeah.
Most of the kids that in my classes that I teach at GCU, if they use AI, they don't know what to ask it, because they didn't really learn it. So they're just getting an idea from TikTok or something on how to put a resume together.
Right.
And that necessarily isn't the same thing as having somebody review it, or your paper that you wrote too.
Exactly. Well, and AI, I don't know if you've ever talked to a candidate that paid someone to put their resume together for them. And I've had candidates send me their resume, and I'm like, you need to get your money back, because this needs to be completely redone. So there are great resume writers out there, and if anybody's looking for someone, I can certainly refer them. But you know yourself better than anybody as a candidate, and there's certain exercises that we will walk someone through if they're really struggling on how do I sell myself in the job market, how do I make sure my resume is doing myself justice. But I know there's frustrations in the market about AI kicking out resumes of a candidate that's really, really great. And I'm, you've been in the business for a long time. You've probably had where you call a hiring manager and you say, I'm going to send you the resume of this candidate, and you're going to think I'm nuts, but you need to meet this person. And here's why I think they're great. Let's, and 9 times out of 10, that's who they hire.
Well, some of the things because I do a lot of industrial stuff, is trying to, and most of my clients that I work with agree, they're not interested in, I try to convince them, don't be interested in the resume, because this guy's not like, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow,
right,
that turns wrenches and fixes your car. So if you just look at the resume, you're kind of wasting your time. That's not necessarily the best person. So trying to get any type of company to understand that is, I think, difficult, because everybody that owns a company thinks my place is the greatest place in the world, and everybody's banging the door to get in. And we know that's not true, because there's other people looking at the same person, which gets into how many interviews can you do before you make a decision? I mean, some people I hear are going through 5 or 6 interviews. What do you think about that?
I think it should be 3 tops, really. And that's the average we see. And that's one of our screening processes with our client is what's your hiring process, and we will tell them that's way too long. You should know within the first, second interview how excited you are about a candidate and how far you want to move them in your process. So I would say usually 3, 4 max. And the 4th interview is typically a board member just putting their stamp of approval on them if it goes that far. Mm-hmm.
And mine's kind of the opposite, because I try to train people and say, listen, if you're hiring refrigeration mechanics, mm-hmm. and we're more of an hourly and project recruiter, not a fee, mm-hmm. if you like somebody on the first interview, hire them.
Yeah.
Because first of all, you could try them out for a week, and you have to, because mm-hmm. they might not be very good at telling you what they do, mm-hmm. but they might be the best AC guy in town.
Yeah.
So give them a shot, and if it doesn't work out, you can
mm-hmm.
part ways at the end of the week, and then we can keep looking.
Yep.
But that person could be somebody that's got 4 or 5 offers mm-hmm. pending. Mm-hmm. So if you're not fast enough, you're not going to hire anybody.
That's true. Now, when we work at our level, it is a little bit different. I've had clients want to make an offer to an executive too quickly. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. This executive is a passive candidate. They're currently employed and they're not unhappy in their current role. But if something enticed them to where like, wow, this is an opportunity I just can't refuse, they might make a move. So the passive market. And so I have to call my client and say, you don't get down on one knee and propose to a girl unless you're pretty sure she's going to say yes. Yeah. And we're not there yet. We need more dates, and so we have to walk our client through the process of how do you, court a candidate at the executive level. And sometimes it takes a longer process to do that.
And plus, you're trying to talk them out of a place, and might be something. I remember, grass mm-hmm. is not always greener.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And here's a couple things. Do you have problems with people setting up interviews with you? I mean, is it more easy in the area that you work in than mine? Because I'm amazed at some of the absolutely crazy stuff that goes on with applicants.
Sure. We used to have a temporary company that was doing temporary workers at lower levels, mm-hmm. and they would have some pretty crazy stories, the recruiters that handled those. At the professional level, not as much. Now, it does happen where somebody schedules an interview with me. They pick a time on my calendar. I use bookings, mm-hmm. And I send them my link. I say, you pick a time that works best for you. Here's my availability and my calendar. And then they don't show up. It's rare, but it does happen. For sure.
On my end, this is some of the things that we get. Mm-hmm. The worst is the car interview. So
what was that again?
Car.
Okay.
So they set a time of their own choosing when they're driving their 3 kids home from school. And there's all the background noise mm-hmm. and all this. And I constantly post about don't do car interviews.
Right. And
you're driving. So mm-hmm. now I got to do 2 things. So how can you answer questions or even take notes?
Sure.
It just shows some level of unpreparedness, or do I really know what I'm doing? And then mm-hmm. the same person will come back and tell you, I don't know why I can't get a job. Yeah. And you pull something like that. Have you ever had anybody do that to you?
Yeah. And we'll be honest with them for sure, and making sure they are dressed professionally. And you wouldn't think that you'd have to remind somebody at the professional level. But especially if they haven't really interviewed for a while, sharing with them current trends, frustrations, and doing it in a professional way, because you don't want to insult somebody that they're like, okay, I don't need mom telling me how to interview, and I'm not your mom, but I'll say, hey, I'm sure you know these things, but I always like to give a quick refresher on what's professional, the best ways to interview, how to sell yourself appropriately in an interview. So let me just send you some information for you to review. If anything, you'll find it, pretty mundane and stuff you already know, but there might be a couple nuggets of information in there that are just really great reminders for you and kind of what I expect. And most candidates at the professional level know, like, especially if I'm sending them to one of my clients, they're loyal to us as a firm and they want to present us professionally. So,
Well, I mean, I think we have some really different stuff. One of the things that we've had over the years too is people that constantly, because I have to use a lot of job boards in addition to other stuff, which you guys probably don't use.
we don't
as
do
much.
that. No, not really.
The job boards, you have people applying nonstop that aren't qualified.
Of course.
So they check they have 3 years of air conditioning, mechanical experience, or whatever that is, and they don't.
Right.
And you click after click. So one of the things that when you're searching in that area, you get thousands of resumes a week. Somebody's got to wade through those. And AI, again, is not going to be your best bet because it's going to be somebody that knows how to write. And some of these people don't. And I frankly, they don't need to.
Right.
But you run into these complex issues of nobody teaches this stuff. I constantly bring this up when I talk to young people. If you don't learn this stuff from somebody, you won't learn it.
Right.
And what kind of issues have you had with candidates that it's interesting or something that you're like, man, that just drives me crazy that they do that?
Well, we're working, nationwide, and so I conduct a lot of interviews via Teams. I use Teams. So I know people use Zoom. One of the things that drives me crazy is if they're not looking at the camera, when they're talking to me. I want, if they're looking at a second screen or,
What about this one? Were they?
Yeah. Or over, I had one guy that was like drinking his coffee, like constantly sipping his cup. And I'm pretty sure at some point the cup was empty. So I was like, why are you, so I don't know if it was like he was nervous.
That's
I think it was a nervous
kind of a
thing.
nervous habit.
Yeah. Or not being prepared, not having good questions. But like I said, at the professional levels, it's rare. But I've already done a phone screen with them, and I can tell if, over the phone typically, if they're not going to be a good fit for the role. And so, that dialogue sets me up for, okay, this is somebody that I want to spend 45 minutes to an hour in a face-to-face meeting via Teams. Yeah.
I had a client that I did a lot of construction stuff with, and they needed a controller. And that's not, I do some of those, but it paid very well. And I could not believe how many people qualified that I reached out to did not look at the company's information, knew absolutely nothing.
Oh, really?
And I was shocked because of the number.
Yeah.
And I expect that from people that are not in that realm. A professional person like that, I blame them more.
Right.
Because you should know better. Have you had that happen before?
I've had it happen before, yeah. We spend a lot of time going over the company with them, and it's a red flag because I send them the company website, I send them details on the organization, the org chart sometimes. And when I meet them in person, the first thing I ask them is, have you had time to research the company? What do you know about them? And, and they will say, well, not really, or, and it is frustrating, but not very often.
Yeah, so I just think if I tell people, they go, well, I didn't have time. And I'm like, well, how many interviews are you getting? So if you get an interview, then you can look up the company. You don't have to look it up just because you're sending them a resume.
Sure.
And when people say, well, I couldn't really find anything, that was okay when 1984 Mike was going to college and had to go to the library to look stuff up. That's not the same anymore. So I don't know whether it's laziness or are people so tired of just maybe getting an intro interview and it never working out that they just kind of said, I'm just going to give up.
Sure. And I think the difference there is the active candidate who's maybe unemployed, trying to interview with every company under the sun versus the passive candidate that's currently employed. If they're going to take a long lunch or call in late to their employer because they're going to attend an interview, they're going to make sure it's worth their time. And do the research on the company and make sure, this is something I really want to go pursue. So maybe that's, that's kind of the difference there.
Now,
as well.
what do you and your folks think about is there just a probably, I wouldn't say massive, but a significant increase in the white collar people applying for any jobs because they're getting squeezed out by AI or maybe the tariffs. There's always something that's to blame.
Sure.
But what's your opinion on that stuff?
Where we're seeing it take longer for candidates to find positions is kind of at the executive level, just because there's only one of that, a CFO, a CEO, a GM, a president. But there's still a talent shortage, especially in certain markets, for accounting and finance professionals. They're finding jobs pretty quickly. So certainly if somebody, in the accounting and finance world is having a hard time finding a role, then there's probably some inward examination that needs to happen of like, why am I having a hard time finding something? Is it the way my resume is written? Am I not pursuing the job market the right way? Sitting at your computer and applying online for open positions is, that's usually the last way people find a position. The first, number one, is networking, actively networking. Even if a company is not actively posting an open position, CFOs, controllers, executives, they've already got people in mind for a position before it actually hits the job market, before HR even got around to maybe writing the job description and getting it posted. They're working their network. So that's the number one. Second is through recruiter relationships, like myself and you. The last is applying online. That's the last way.
Yeah, it's kind of like you have to do it, but it shouldn't be your sole focus.
Not your sole focus.
And it's a absolute brain-sucking siege. I think that's what gets people so negative.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew a guy that we hired him. This was when I had my staffing company. One of the things he used to do is he'd go to, when there was a Sears, so I'm dating myself.
Yeah.
He went to Sears and bought a bunch of little wrenches, and he would take his resume and tie them to the wrench and drop them off at various places.
Oh, yeah.
He got 2 calls before he got finished doing his run. And I go, nobody did that.
Yep.
But I mean, can you imagine if you were, I would have called that guy in 2
Yeah.
seconds, because if he's going to come all the way over here,
Yep.
have you anybody unusual do stuff like that with you guys?
I'll tell you a story. So my nephew, he's a sophomore in college now. He was looking for a job, like out of high school, and needs something while he's attending college. He's in Northwest Indiana. And I was visiting for the summer, my family, and I said, okay, I'm gonna take you and you're gonna find a job. I'm gonna show you how to do it. And so I said, wear a pair of khakis, a nice polo shirt, and we're gonna drive. He wanted to work retail. He didn't want to do fast food. And I said, where do you want to work? Let's go. And we drove to all these different places, like Home Depot, Menards. I don't know if we have Menards here.
No, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, grocery stores, things like that. And he's like, I really want to work at Barnes & Noble. Loves books. I said, okay, great. You're going to go in there and you're going to ask to speak to the manager. And he did it at several places. He did get a lot of like, well, you have to apply online, Target, so he'd walk out. And but he did go to Barnes & Noble, spoke to the manager, and said, I'm really interested in working here. And she said, well, I don't have anything now, but, follow up with me. Usually when the semester starts for college, our college students, their class schedules don't work, and I might lose somebody. And so I said, okay, Bryson, you're going to go home and you're going to write a thank you note. You're going to mail it to her. You're going to send her an email. And sure enough, she called him a couple months later, and he's been working there for the last 2 years. But it's old school. If you want, go find the job you want and go get it.
And then what you said, there's the error of these companies is like, if it was me advising a company, I would say, if somebody does that to you, tell them to sit for 5 minutes or whatever and go talk to them. And because again, the manager's like, we need to hire people, but he's not willing to take the 5 minutes. And then you can have, I'm sure there's a way, hey, go put me down as a referral. Now go fill out the app.
Right.
I'll make a phone call in 24 hours and say, hey, this kid stopped by. But, I think we miss a step with this big ladder that we put together.
Yeah.
And we missed out on an opportunity to really interview somebody rather than just look at a resume.
Absolutely. And, I talk to hiring managers on a weekly basis that are frustrated with their company's hiring practices. They've got HR recruiters, they're handling open requisitions at such a high volume. And it's time consuming. They don't have the time to sift through. And there's a hiring manager at that company that needed somebody yesterday, and they're waiting for their internal recruiter who's doing the best they can. God bless them, But if you reach out to that hiring manager and say, I applied online and I just want you to know that I'm interested in your company, and you make a personal introduction, that hiring manager very well may respond to you and push you through the process.
I think that's my opinion of HR and recruiting should never be in the same department. I think recruiting ought to be probably underneath more of a sales or a ... to the CFO, because it's two jobs and you're better off because they're more worried about the HR first. This is just my view.
Sure.
And hiring second, whereas the recruiter is the other way.
Yeah.
And if you go on to any site today, you will find recruiter jobs out the kazoo. And one of the reasons why I think is because it's so much easier just to hire recruiters willy-nilly and then just keep letting them go. Oh, let's blame the recruiter. Well, when really it's your process that's too slow.
Sure.
Or, okay, I need this guy first before this guy. What do you think about that?
I think it's true. Well, and we're also coming out of a period where, 2024 was really tough for hiring. 2025 got a little bit better. That's certainly depending on what skill levels, but a lot of big companies cut their internal talent acquisition team. A lot of internal recruiters got laid off. Now they're hiring, but now they're all new to the company. They have to learn the different departments. They have to learn the culture. They have to learn the jobs, and they're behind the 8 ball. And hiring managers are frustrated. So absolutely. And a lot of big companies do have a separate talent acquisition team, and HR more your standard HR is separate. But sometimes it's the fat that gets cut first. So
now back to what was it your nephew you said that? So I am with 18 to 22-year-olds probably for two classes a year. And one of them I teach is the networking class. And the problem I see almost in every class, and it's getting better, is after COVID, people totally forgot how to communicate.
Yeah.
They can't have a conversation without the phone in front of them. And they're always looking for it. If you put it somewhere, oh my God, it's like withdrawals.
Yeah.
And they don't have conversations with their peers. They don't even know people in the class. So I try to my whole goal for that whole semester is to get people talking to other people and having a conversation with somebody that's not in one of the ones where you got your head down and you don't want to look people in the eye and stuff like that. That seems to be like a lost parenting thing.
Right.
People don't, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, if somebody came in the room, you stood up and shook their hand. And then my dad would say, I want you to do the pleasantries, then get the hell out of here. But I mean, have you seen that with the younger people? I
have. And that's one thing, students coming out of college, if you have the gift of gab and you can talk, you can look people in the eye and have a conversation, you will stand out head and shoulders above your peers and you will get a job over the person that might have stronger technical skills, because I see that happen all the time. The soft skills are important, and the employer will say, I can train the technical stuff. I want somebody who can sit in a meeting, who can brainstorm, who can strategize, who can clearly communicate their initiatives. I'll train them on the technical stuff.
What do you say to people when you look at their resume and it's full of maybe they have great experience, but it's all short term, a year and a half here, year and a half there, 2 years here.
Sure.
I think those are very hard to place.
They are very hard to place. And I know, Gone are the days where people stayed with a company 20, 30 years. And also I'll walk a client through it as well. If early in their career they've got maybe an internship, then they did 1.5, 2 years, they're on that upward bell curve. So they're going to be leaving for that next promotion. They're filling their tool belt with their skills, but it should level off at some point. And I'll tell the candidate, you can do that for the first couple jobs. Everybody's allowed an oops as well. I joined a company, didn't realize I was going to be working 15-hour days, and I'm miserable. I can't stay here. You're allowed that oops. But really, asking the tough questions, and you got to then hang your hat and kind of stick it out for 3, 4, 5 years, because clients don't like when they see all that jumping around. For sure.
And that's the same way in the trades, because people don't want to spend time training somebody and then have them walk.
Right.
And past history usually shows what's going on, unless there's something. Now, if you're like a hydraulic mechanic, you could be hopping around every 6 months because people will pay you because those guys don't exist.
Right.
So it just really depends on the job. Here's another thing I was just thinking about. What are the younger candidates that you see? Do they mention things that I hear all the time about, oh, there wasn't enough growth, oh, I wasn't a cultural fit, or I was underappreciated? Do you hear that from, what's the age? I
Sure.
kind of see it 35 and below is
Right.
kind of where you hear that a lot.
I will hear it, and I'll say, tell me more about that. Walk me through why you felt that way. And if they come back and just say, I was just underappreciated. Okay, maybe there's something there that they don't want to tell you. But if a candidate can say, well, this is why, and they can give you a good examples of, then I'll just kind of make a discerning call. Like, okay, that's legitimate. I would feel that way too. Or maybe I got to put them in an environment where they don't have to be so tough,
How do you handle when people bring up like, oh, I had a serious issue with HR or something like that? And then most definitely, I always would go like, wow, like, what was it about? And then people will just rattle on. Do you ever have that happen? And is there
Not
any?
as often.
Yeah.
Not as often at the levels that we place. In accounting and finance, I certainly hear they were doing things unethical. The company was asking me to sign off on financials that weren't correct, or, and then you're like, okay, yeah, you leave. Yeah, especially if you've got a CPA and you're not going to compromise your certifications and things like that. So we hear that, but not as much, on other HR issues.
So what systems do you use? Like if somebody was looking for a job in your level, what do you use for finding openings, getting them so you can represent them?
Sure.
And what kind of internet tools? I mean, we said it's not Indeed, but is it LinkedIn, or what? How do people get seen for somebody like you?
It's, I know it can be frustrating because I get a lot of calls like, hey, I'm looking for a position. Can you help me find a position? And so it's this misconception at the volume that we work, companies are paying us to find the right candidate. So I don't have, hundreds of jobs open, at a level. I certainly can, if there's a common thread, I know, okay, I've got a company that kind of always looks for talent like this, and then I will, make a call. But one thing I will tell a candidate is like, hey, if I placed every person that came to me, I'd be a very wealthy woman. Unfortunately, just my profession just doesn't work like that. I'm kind of held to, the qualifications that my clients are looking for. But I'm always looking to network, and I will open my network to you because companies don't always have the budget. Our average fee is $40,000, $50,000, that companies are paying us to go out there and find a highly, specific skill set.
Somebody that's not taking interviews in their car.
Right. Yeah. So, but, I will tell a candidate, but I will give you pointers. I'll spend 30 minutes on the phone with you. And open my network. If there's somebody in my network that you would like an introduction to, let me know. I'm happy to do that for you. almost gratis, but almost as a putting some good karma out in the world, doing that as a favor to people.
Now, for me, for some reason, people, when they refer you, they immediately think, and I don't, tell me if this happens to you, that you're immediately going to be able to go snap your fingers and get them a job.
Yeah.
Do you have that happen where, oh yeah, Joe Schmo told me to call you because you can help get me a job, and I got to go, whoa.
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah. Do you have that happen?
Sometimes I do, and I just try to like manage their expectations and say, I'll definitely keep my eyes peeled, but you're likely going to find your next job through networking. Let me talk to you about, do you know how to do that? Let me give you some pointers on where you should start, who you should contact, maybe some networking groups that you should reach out to. And I just try to help them, steer them in the right direction if they do that.
I always tell people today you should be, and especially with the snap decisions that get made, you should be keeping up your LinkedIn profile, making sure you're not putting out anything that's disruptive on your
Right.
social media posts, no bongs or
Yeah.
shotgun and beers or stuff like. Now, if you own the company, you can do whatever you want, but you don't want to be doing those type of things because people, even though you're not supposed to look at it, we know they do look at it.
Of course.
So, have you had people have you looked at and said, hey, you got some crazy stuff on your social media, you might want to wash.
I've absolutely done that. I will look at it, especially if they're early in their career. I'll be like, okay, you want to make that private, clean it up, take off. I understand you had a wild bachelor party last weekend. I would make those private, certainly.
By the way, and when we had bachelor parties, nobody was ever allowed to bring cameras. I mean, I was like, you would have got those broke.
Yeah.
But see, today,
It's normal.
phones are everywhere. And by the way, you could be the innocent bystander. You could be just like looking, oh, hey, there's Seann. Wonder what she's doing with those people. And now you're put in with the rest of the misbehaviors.
But it's interesting. I'm hearing from my friends who have high school, college age students that there's almost this wave of they're wising up about social media. Some of them are choosing not to be on it because they've kind of seen the harm and don't want to put themselves out there like that, don't want to be exposed to some of that riffraff. So I'm hoping the pendulum might be swinging in the opposite direction is my hope.
Or it'll get legislated out, like this big lawsuit in California, obviously. And if you let the court system decide, it's pretty much locked.
Yeah, Australia, I believe Australia
16.
just banned a certain age cannot have social media accounts.
And I can see why,
because
because you can get on some of these things. I have to limit myself because as an ADHD person, I can go into a hole like one after the other. You can literally blow 20 minutes.
Oh.
And you were thinking it's like 5.
Yeah, it just goes. Yeah, I don't have any social media aside from LinkedIn on my phone. I'd have to be in front of a computer to log into it, and it has to be really intentional. Just because, for that reason, I just don't want my daughter to see me on it on my phone. Like, I would just want to kind of limit that exposure. So it's a smart thing to do.
What do you think people should have what's an important thing that they should have on their LinkedIn profile that maybe they haven't thought of?
Certainly some of their skill sets, check those boxes that what experience you have, software experience, a good tagline at the top to explain kind of what their profession is, a professional picture.
Yes.
Not you and your kids, you and your, yes, you and your dogs. I have some pet food clients that they make pet food, and so they have a picture with them and their dogs. That's fine. But make sure it's professional.
Well, I like the one where the dude's sunburn at the lake with the Coors Light.
Oh.
That's one of my favorites, which is
Yeah.
I had a student when I first started it. That was his LinkedIn picture.
Right.
And I was like, great if you're trying to run a fraternity, but not for that way. And then, and it's not that hard to do.
Sure.
And I always tell guys, because they'll go, well, we don't like, I go ask a girl to take your picture and see if they like it.
Yeah.
And I go, then that's perfectly fine. Now I would use
Absolutely.
that. But I go, don't let you and your buddies pick it.
Right. Absolutely.
Is So what do you think? I mean, I have a opinion of what's going to happen that I think as we're getting to the close of our deal here, of what AI is going to do to hiring. What do you think? How is it going to affect it? I mean, take us out. I mean, and geez, it's only been like 3.5 or 4 years of this. What's it
Right.
going to look like in another 5 years?
I think that's where people are unsure. You know, it's this unknown variable right now. But what we're finding is like it will replace some of the transactional stuff, like let's say accounts payable, accounts receivable, processing. You know, anything that's process oriented, it could replace some of that stuff. And but you can't. It's not going to become human. It's not going to be able to sit down with business leaders and strategize with them on, you know, the forward thinking of a company and, you know, what's trending and, you know, how do we make business decisions, you know, based on, you know, it can certainly provide some data, but it might not analyze the data at the level that we can see. But it's certainly, you know, I don't know what you're seeing with your college students. That's a good question. Are they coming into GCU going, I don't know what to major in? Because
Yes, they're
you know,
confused.
I think,
And they're
it's rightfully
wondering
so.
if the education is going to be worth it, because they're like, because I'm
Yeah.
like, I do a lot of verbal and stuff in class. How many people do you think are using ChatGPT to do their homework?
Sure.
Like piles. And so if you can do that and get through, because people are busy grading or whatever, and they're not reading everything, let's
Yeah.
be reasonable here. That stuff's going to get to the point to where you're going to say, well, why do I need to go to school for 25 to 50 grand a year?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wasting my time.
Yep.
I mean, my 31-year-old would have told you that. He told me that when he got out of high school. I'm not going to college.
Yeah.
And that was back then. Now I can actually agree some people shouldn't be there.
Sure. Well, and I think for the levels that you're staffing, the trades
Yeah.
are going to be hot, you know, and because you still need somebody to build things, you still need somebody to fix things, and those aren't going away. I have a client that does student loans, and they're out there assessing trade schools on offering student loans for trades, which has not been a big, you know, usually the student loan business
Right.
has been on the four-year universities. So he's going in and assessing trade schools and saying, okay, we can offer you a loan program, but what he's going to be assessing is, okay, of the students that attend your school, what percentage get a job and keep a job? Because he needs to analyze, are they going to be able to pay back the loan?
Yes.
You know, and so that's going to be a big market increase for them.
I think if you look at the footprints that the schools have in Arizona, if you get a reduction in demand and people don't go, what are you going to do with all these places? Air conditioning,
Yeah.
Plumbing,
Yeah.
parking garages, food places. And if you don't have customers, I just don't see anybody worried about that. I would be extremely worried if I was running a school.
Sure.
I'd be like, how am I going to make, what happens if they come up with ChatGPT University for $5 grand a year?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I meet with my financial planner regularly. I've got a daughter in 5th grade now, and she's got her 529 account that we put money into regularly. And my financial planner's like, who even knows what college is going to look like when she's attending? We don't really know. But, you know, and I would encourage anybody, we can't be frozen in fear, right? But we have to be prepared to pivot. And even when I'm advising somebody on their career, or should I take this job, you know, should I stay where I am? And I'm just like, you got to make the decision that's best for you with the information you have at hand. Information is constantly going to change. Like when the information changes, then you pivot and you can change course, but don't be frozen in fear, you know, waiting for something to come along, or waiting for information to change, or, you know, waiting for something to get better. Like, we just got to keep moving forward. So,
Well, Seann, it's been great having you. Give everybody a little commercial for yourself.
sure. Yeah. So we like to partner with companies that take their hiring practices seriously, where we know candidates are going to go and really thrive in their careers there. We like to get to know our clients very, very well. Over 90% of our business comes to us by legacy clients or referrals from legacy clients. And we, and they say they just got to know us really well. They get to know our teams. They get to know our managers. They match strong talent. And so that's what we do. So,
Right.
yeah,
It was great having you on.
Yeah, thank you. I
Again,
appreciate your time.
Yeah, great. Again, it was fantastic. It's interesting. A lot of this stuff, if you're a job seeker or work at a company, I would think would be useful because you're hearing it from people that have been doing it for a while. Again, this is Mike Hayes for the Hiring Confessional. Have a good day.